So picking up where we left off, what we're going to do first is we're going to kind of start by installing stuff on the back here, and then we'll work our way around. We're going to start with the turbo oil feed line, which we already had our nipple, which is right there, put in place. So I'm just going to hook the hose up. After that, I will get the alternator in, which is just a couple bolts right here. And then we'll come back and do the exhaust manifold. Alright, so we got the oil feed line on and torqued, as well as the alternator. That gets torqued down to 32 foot-pounds. Oil feed line just gets tight. There's a crush washer behind that. Next thing we'll do is the exhaust manifold, and from there, probably the turbo. Alright, so we got that full race Pro Stock exhaust manifold in. I just have this temporarily put in. I was going to reuse this exhaust manifold gasket, but after looking at it a little bit better, I'm going to order another one. And I somehow managed to lose a couple of the nuts for the flange bolts. So that's just temporarily put on, which is fine. I wasn't going to throw the turbo on for a while. Next thing I want to do is start kind of bolting some stuff up to the bottom of the trans here. We'll get the slave cylinder on, and then go from there. Maybe the clutch cables and the slave cylinder or hard line. We'll figure it out, I guess. So the slave cylinder is just going to get bolted in by those two bolts down there and torqued down to 25 Newton meters. So the next thing I did after getting that slave cylinder in was I just kind of stretched the clutch hard line out to where it's gonna be. I put the shifter cable bracket in place, dropped the shifter cables in, and now we got some pretty good shifting action going on. So just to confirm that everything's working out good. Yeah, I can feel it hitting every gear, so eventually I'm going to be doing aftermarket shifter cables. I forget the guy's name that does it on the Mazda forums, but there's a guy on there that makes some pretty nice high quality shift cables, so we'll be throwing those in down the road. So yeah, let's continue going on. Alright, so jumping to the back of the motor real quick, I just hooked up the Innovate Motorsports O2 sensor, just because I was kind of hanging back there. So that's all hooked up, and it's not dragging anymore, so I'll hook the primary O2 sensor up later. It's somewhere in all that pile of electrical bullshit. But next thing, let's get the starter on. Got that nice shiny new starter on. Both these bolts get torqued down to 50 Newton meters, and the bolt that's got the thread on it for the other nut is on the top. So going from here, I don't know. I'm gonna have to figure out what to do next. Take a quick break, and we'll be back for more assembly. Went ahead and threw the knock sensor on. That just gets torqued down to 24 Newton meters. Just something that was quick, easy, and gets it off the workbench. So let's continue to add stuff to this block. So what I went ahead and did is put this transmission bracket on. This little guy holds these two wires coming out of the trans. I also went and hooked up my hydraulic fluid line for the slave cylinder. Went ahead and put it back in its bracket back there on the shift cable bracket, and I did have to kind of bend it to fit a little bit around this. I don't know if it got bent somehow in the install, but it wasn't quite fitting, so slight little easy bends, and yeah, so starting to put more pieces together. Decided to continue going on the front of the motor here. Went ahead and threw on the oil cooler as well as the cork sport sandwich plate. Basically, the 4 bolts that hold on the oil cooler get torqued down to 21 foot-pounds, and then this bolt on the top here that actually holds the cooler to the adapter plate that gets down to 30 foot-pounds, and then the kind of adapter nut that holds on the corkswort sandwich plate just gets hand tightened, and the oil filter will go under there, obviously hand tightened as well. I think the next thing we're going to do is put our water neck and the cam lobe on for the high pressure fuel pump. I know there's some stuff that's underneath there. I'm kind of debating on going back through my old videos, looking at the process that I removed it, seeing if I want to throw that down first. I know I could probably tuck it. I'm just trying to clear this workbench off. This thing was full earlier today, and feels nice getting a lot of this shit on the car. But I do have those just kind of sitting ready that I don't have to dig out of, part storage, which is all like there and way under there. So might as well get the easy stuff. I'm gonna have to wait on the fuel rail and that type of stuff because I need to get the injectors sent out to be cleaned and redone. And then I want to hold off on the turbo probably to last because I do want to get new gaskets. You can see this rusted up over time. And I got stuff like this bracket that I completely forgot where the fuck that went. So I gotta look through my old videos. So I'm glad I'm doing these. But let's keep continuing with the water neck and the high pressure fuel pump. Got the water outlet on. Those 4 8mm bolts I was not able to find a torque spec for, so I just went like hand tight plus a tiny little bit more. So hopefully it doesn't leak. If not, we'll tighten it back up more. Next thing we're going to do is put the high pressure fuel pump on, and that should be easy. That's just like 3 or 4 E8 bolts, and I should have the torque spec for that one this time. Alright, so I got the high pressure fuel pump on. It wasn't actually the E8 bolts. The E8 bolts are for this half of it. So there's 3 10mm, 1 12mm bolts holding this half of it on. It was kind of a pain in the ass because you have that tensioner collar, kind of like bucket thing that rides on your camshaft, and that has a good amount of tension on it. So I found that by putting it in at an angle and kind of swinging it in, allowed me to kind of rotate it on that camshaft without hurting nothing. And those get torqued down to 23 Newton meters. Next thing I went ahead and did is just went ahead and slid this coolant pipe in place. And this is just a temporary reminder for me because as you can see, that is not going to hold up to the quality that we're trying to make this build. So I'll probably end up just doing all new, maybe flexible hose, and then do like a T in here for this little spout that goes to the water neck. I don't know, I'll have to think on that, but I just have it, temporarily screwed in right here. I can finish threading that down, but just to hold it in place as a reminder. Probably would have been easier putting that in before that bracket, because it was kind of a bitch to slide it back through, but it wasn't too bad. But like I said, that's not gonna stay, and honestly I'll probably take this bracket off, clean that bitch up too, and paint it. Still gotta clean all this side of the trans up. We got a lot of cleaning to do, paint like the rust spots on this and all that shit. But yeah, the other thing I did notice too is I was kind of going back through old videos of the disassembly, and my old videos had the knock sensor down here. Some of the forms have it up there. So I'm just going to go with what I knew before worked, and that was on the old motor. It was down there. Still the same torque spec, and the only reason is because sometimes online, like, people put diagrams for torque specs for the regular non-turbo Mazda3 motor or the Sky Active. So I don't know. It worked there before. I don't see why it wouldn't work now. But yeah, so that's just something to note. Went ahead and threw on my Damon dual catch can setup. I'm not going to run the lines just yet because I'm more than likely going to end up going to like a AN braided line. I know Damon's got a new kit out that incorporates AN lines. So I'm gonna have to look to see if I'm able to get fittings to just convert it. I don't know what I'd have to do on this end. Maybe run like a tap and die over it. Who knows? I'll have to hit a couple buddies up about that. But for now, those will just hang out, kind of chill right there, just to get them out of the way. Got the Cork Sport exhaust manifold heat shield on. Holy shit, man! Does that thing look so nice? The camera doesn't pick it up super well. The black on cherry with that full race Manny, but it looks good. I wonder if I try and get this light in here better. Yeah, I'm happy with that. That's beautiful. Alright, so update time. Got the car moved. We're at my grandpa's garage where the car is going to be stored for the indefinite future. And did a couple things on it without filming, just kind of got excited and got into it. So let me show you, update you guys on what's going on with the build, and hopefully soon we'll get this thing up and going. Alright, so we got the car sitting in my grandpa's garage. You can see we got his GTX here. We'll have access to the hoist, which is nice. Valiant station wagon. There's Challenger parked out back. There's Corvette. But anyways, as you guys can see, front clip's on. I went ahead and basically did the Koyo radiator. I don't think you can see here by the all aluminum ends. Still a one row radiator, however it is about 6 millimeters thicker, I believe. And while I was at it, I also got rid of the AC condenser that was sitting in front of it. You can actually see I got the thing sitting right here. So we got rid of the AC condenser, which is this part. That'll free up more airflow to the radiator, hopefully cool it better. I went ahead and torqued on the crash bar and put the Treadstone intercooler back on. It's a TR1035. The bumper is just on there. I mean, it's just got the quick disconnect clips. I haven't put really any of these fasteners on because I know that'll be coming probably back on and off. Other than that, we still need to get the new gasket and a few bolts for the exhaust manifold. Still gotta order a couple things for up front, send the injectors out to be cleaned, and then I can put all that stuff on the front together. Today I'm going to be doing some of the work with the wiring harness, get the wiring back on, and then probably route some of the coolant lines. I am waiting for Cork Sport to release their coolant tank. Hopefully that'll be out someday soon. They've been teasing it for a while now, but that thing's ugly and needs to be taken care of. Other than that, I did put on my Cork Sport high pressure fuel line, the braided line. I did notice something I didn't really like about it, and I don't know if this is going to be an issue or not. But if you look, that rubber is starting to separate from the fitting, and you can kind of see some braided hose sticking out. I don't think it's going to be a problem, but hopefully that doesn't leak. It also rubs really tight up against this EGR neck, and that's because this part, the stainless part of the fitting, is almost a bit too long. If it was shorter, or if this was on like a 45, it would be able to drop down in there way better. But that's in there. I put, just a couple the AN fuel lines on just for moving the car when it was shipping from the old house to here, because a ton of stuff is packed inside of it. But yeah, let's get going on these wiring harness, try and clean some of that up and get it back in place. Alright, so we got the wiring done. We had that big giant loom there that stretched all the way along here, went down, connected to the power steering pump, This side was a fucking nightmare figuring out how everything was routed, going up into the fender, back to the wheel speed sensor, all that bullshit. I'm so glad I'm done with that. It took like 2.5 hours to route this one line. Even going through the videos I had was still a pain in the ass. But yeah, you can see that coil radiator a lot better now. But next step is we'll put the coolant lines that go along here on here as well. Get that bottom coolant line on and keep going with it. Made some good progress. Got the Mishimoto silicone coolant line kit in. It was a pretty easy install. Basically, just find the stock lines and replace them. You know, it doesn't take too much skill to match up which one looks like what and kind of where it goes. But yeah, so that's where we're at now. Take a break and get back at it later. But I think we got a good amount accomplished today. We got that first wiring harness put on. Still got the main harness for the ECU, but we got one of the big ones knocked out, so I'm happy about that. So yeah, catch you guys in a bit. So continuing on with the coolant hoses, I went ahead and put on this hose that goes from there to the bottom of the water neck. I also put on the hella horns and wired them guys back up. So didn't really need a video of that. That was just mounting them up and replugging them in. But yeah, so we're getting back to working on this. We're gonna probably keep going with more coolant hoses, and still not a ton more I can do because I'm still waiting on gaskets for stuff back there to like put the turbo and shit on, injectors and stuff so I can put the intake on. So there's just only a couple little things I can think of now, but just trying to kill some time. But let's keep going on it. So the next line I hooked up is going to be the one going from the thermostat housing down to the oil cooler. And then I also went back here on the back of this water neck and hooked up the hose that goes into the firewall. So as far as water lines go, I still need to fab up a replacement for this. I'm going to do like a silicone line up. I need to find some T's that reduce down to smaller sizes. One for right there, and then one for on the back side right there. So that'll replace that line, but other than that, most of my water lines are hooked up. Obviously still got to do the ones for the turbo, but that'll be when the turbo is in place. So moving forward, I think I'm going to start stretching that wiring harness that connects to my ECU. So the next step was just to splice out a little section of this coolant hose here so that I could put in my adapter for my coolant temp gauge, the Innovate Motorsports gauge. But now that we got that on, I'm going to go run to the parts store, and I took off that line that went from the oil cooler all the way up, snaked back, and went to the this line right there, that rusty one. I'm gonna go ahead and get a new replacement for that. We're just gonna do a silicone line with 2 T's to replace the little, I think, 1/4 inch line that goes up underneath here, and then the one that goes to feed the turbo. I also just threw on this Damon vacuum block here. I need to make a new mount to extend this out a little bit, or maybe put it down here. Still got to figure that out, but just trying to kill some time. Another thing I also did was just temporarily put into place my autometer gauge. This is for fuel level, and that's an Ortiz custom gauge pod for the steering wheel. Of course, I don't have the key with me, so the steering wheel's locked, but you can kind of see it there. It's just a digital gauge that's going to show me my fuel level percentage in the fuel cell. And then we'll have the E85 content and fuel pressure down there. So yeah, I'll get back to you guys. Gonna go ahead and get a replacement for that rusty line, and we'll keep moving on the water lines. One thing I also did was hooked up the electrical loom that feeds the injectors. So that's in place. Pretty much all the electrical is done. I just have to do the coil packs, but that'll have to wait because the valve cover's got to come back off so that I can put a timing tool in there, get this thing at top dead center, and put my blanking out, it's been a long day, crank position sensor in, and set that correctly because that has not been done yet. That needs to be done. So yeah, I'll get back with you guys. Alright, so I'm back, and quite some time has passed, but just a quick update. Decided not to go with that silicone hose to replace the rusty water line just because it added too many failure points. So I put the rusty hose back in, but we're going to get a couple more things done and then wrap this episode up. But what I wanted to update on is, I'm sure you saw it right there, 2013 Mazdaspeed3. So that is going to be my new daily driver. I've had it for a couple weeks now. Might do a couple videos on it. I don't know too much. It's got a CST4 turbo, a lot of Cork Sport stuff on it. It's pushing about 330 horsepower or so. I'm about to redo the tune with Will from Purple Drink Tuning. We're going to do a really conservative, reliable daily driver type of tune on it. But yeah, that's my new daily driver. Got rid of the Subaru, and we got a 2013. So let's see here. We got the JMF port injection manifold on with the ID 1050X injectors. JBR dipstick handle just looks really nice in there. Cork Sport coolant tank. Got rid of that old nasty looking one. Definitely a lot better quality. Next I need to come out with a power steering tank because that's nasty looking. But yeah, that's where I'm going to end this video at. I think the next one we're going to be putting the turbo on. So thank you for watching. Feel free to comment any questions, like, and subscribe. Thanks guys.